No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken episode number 339. And breaking today, Britain's slide towards Islamism is complete, with Jewish folk no longer able to be protected by police at a Maccabi Tel Aviv football game versus Aston Villa in Birmingham. And I don't care what reversal he comes up with now. Shabana Mahmood knew about this a week ago. So it is a disgrace which shames Slippery Starmer and proves sectarianism is now here to stay ahead of an attempted Muslim takeover of our Christian country.
Aston Villa has been told by the authorities in Birmingham that no fans of the Israeli club Maccabi Tel Aviv may attend the Europa League match against Aston Villa.
When the Tel Aviv fans come to Birmingham in a few weeks, we will not show them rahmah in Birmingham.
We're talking about violent fans, and I think the Prime Minister should stay out of operational matters. That's not a matter for him sitting in number 10 Downing Street. It's a matter for the local police teams here in Birmingham.
We tried to warn you diversity is not our strength and that multiculturalism has failed.
Jewish people have been banned from attending a football match in Birmingham in the UK in 2025. This at the behest of Muslims who are in control in that place, in control of the courts, in control of the police, in control of what goes on in that city.
Yet many British Jews in the elite class have decided, despite this extraordinary climate, to make their focus attacking Tommy Robinson on his state visit of Israel. It's nuts.
And I think that it is very important to understand this is not about Hamas and Israel. This is about the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a huge global movement.
He says that the problem is Islam, and what that erases, of course, is that in Israel, in real Israel, there are 20% Arab Israelis who the majority of are Muslims.
But this is what the surging Green Party under the tit whisperer Zach Polanski thinks is Britain.
Sprinkle some fresh Indians, Malaysians, Bosnians, Iraqis and Bangladeshis, together with some Palestinians, then add to the melting pot.
Why Starmer is finished in my digest next. Then, the best analysis you'll get anywhere from acclaimed historian and broadcaster Rafe Haydel Mankoo, fellow of the New Culture Forum. Also coming up on the show today, no justice for Peter Lynch as new details of his shocking death behind bars are revealed. This is Britain's political prisoner. We can't ignore this story. Lawrence Fox in a major free speech win after he has a Court of Appeal judgment overturned over untrue claims he's racist. And Donald Trump asks Queen Camilla for gossip about Meghan Markle. What is going on there? We will reveal the details. Then in the Royal Uncancelled After Show over on Substack after the main show, Meghan Markle's botched promo tour continues during an awkward celebrity dinner in LA, where she's furious about being interrupted as worrying new details about her marriage to Prince Harry emerge. So we're going to have all the latest over there on YouTube with According to Taz. Sign up at www.outspoken.live. Now, of course, it is a Friday, which means we'll also be unveiling the worst Britain in the world this week. We put your Union Jackass winners from Monday to Thursday head-to-head in a mega poll. Over 100,000 of you voted last week, which was just incredible. You can find the poll right now in the posts section on the Dan Wootton Outspoken YouTube page. A quick reminder of your Union Jackasses who are going head-to-head. On Monday, it was Tony Blair. Tuesday, Slippery Starmer. Wednesday, Samuel Williams, the suspended Oxford student. Thursday, Rachel from Accounts. So get voting. We will unveil the worst Britain in the world this week at the end of the show, and your feedback too. But now, let's go. Be in no doubt that we are now seeing the very obvious conclusion of the UK's slide towards Islamism, where major cities are now no-go zones for groups in the crosshairs of British Muslims, especially Jewish folk. This was the tragically inevitable conclusion of the decision by the deep state and elite class not only to import the third world and allow the invasion of our shores by terrorists, murderers, and rapists, but to look the other way, as our cities were overrun and sectarianism became prominent. This is Birmingham, the UK's second city, a victim of suicidal empathy by our leaders. But if you dare point this out, you'll be immediately derided as far-right or racist. So many don't. But I will. And let me just be very clear for anyone at the back. Diversity is not our strength, and multiculturalism has failed. So please don't be surprised and feign horror when the corrupted police give in to a campaign by Islamist MPs to ban Jewish fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv from attending a fixture against Aston Villa. And do not pretend that Jewish people are safe in the United Kingdom anymore. The Manchester synagogue attacks proves they are not. Here's how the MSM broke the news.
Let's bring you some breaking news now about Aston Villa's match against Maccabi Tel Aviv in a few weeks. Well, our sports correspondent Rob Harris has more details on it. Rob, what else can you tell us?
Aston Villa has been told by the authorities in Birmingham that no fans of the Israeli club Maccabi Tel Aviv may attend the Europa League match against Aston Villa at the start of November. They're citing safety concerns. There had been growing questions in the Birmingham area about this fixture, the potential particularly for pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli protests to take place around this match. Talks have been going on for weeks, and we understand meetings today have led to this decision.
But behind the headlines, there is a darkness about this decision that very few people are prepared to acknowledge. Like the fact Birmingham hate preacher Asta Rashid told his followers that the Muslims of Birmingham should show no mercy to the football fans from Tel Aviv. Watch.
We safeguard the vulnerable from any type of exploitation. That is the character of a Muslim, or has a Muslim as a rahmah. Remember, rahmah is in its place. It's in its place. When the Tel Aviv fans come to Birmingham in a few weeks, we will not show them rahmah in Birmingham, but it has its time and place. If you meet an IDF soldier and you charge him riba, there is no riba. You can take from him. Take, not give. You meet this IDF guy and you say, you know your team's gonna win, and you say, okay, if they win, you gotta give me $10,000. Your team wins, you take the $10,000 from him. Is it haram? The answer is no. If your team loses, you don't pay him.
Enough. Seriously, get this guy off, please. Honestly, it goes on and on and on and on. It is utterly chilling. And men who think just like him are now in our parliament, stoking the British holy war and attempting to end our status as a Christian country. Most shameful, the Jeremy Corbyn ally, Ayub Khan, who celebrated the news on X, which even he admitted equated to drastic measures to impose a racist ban. Watch.
Well, excellent news for the people of Birmingham and, most importantly, the residents here in Aston. I launched a petition to oppose the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming to Birmingham and then into the Aston Villa Stadium. The surrounding ward of Aston is a ward that sits within my constituency. And I had many residents and businesses express concern of the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from coming into our area. Clearly, we have all witnessed the scenes in Amsterdam, the violence that was displayed by the fans the night before the match. We all watched and listened to those vile chants of hatred and racism. And so there's no space for that kind of behaviour here in Birmingham. There's certainly no space for that kind of conduct in Aston. So I'm very pleased that both the West Midlands Police and Aston Villa Football Club have now written to UEFA informing them of their decision not to allow any fans from entering Birmingham and Aston.
His celebration tour continued on the British Bashing Corporation's Newsnight.
Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, said the decision's wrong. He said, we won't tolerate anti-Semitism on our streets. You welcomed the decision. Who's right?
Well, he's clearly wrong. Nobody should tolerate anti-Semitism. That's a position which is consistent across the whole House of Commons, for example. Every parliamentarian will stick with that statement. We all condemned what happened in Manchester. That was clearly anti-Semitic, but we cannot conflate anti-Semitism when we look at what some of these fans did in Amsterdam in 2024. The vile chants of racism and hatred, the chants that there are no schools left in Gaza because there are no children left in Gaza. We're talking about violent fans, and I think the Prime Minister should stay out of operational matters. That's not a matter for him sitting in number 10 Downing Street. It's a matter for the local police teams here in Birmingham to make an assessment. And of course, we must ensure that it's not just residents that are protected and are safe, but fans and players.
Tommy Robinson raged after that interview. Muslim MPs celebrate as Jewish football supporters are banned from watching their team in England, calls Aston in Birmingham our area. Lawrence Fox added, "Go home, Ayub. Your thuggish and bullying values are so deeply antithetical to ours that there is no way we can coexist in peace. Return to Pakistan, run for office there. Islam has no place in Britain. Leave." And Robert Jenrick made the point that he's been proven right about comments that the regime media widely claimed were racist, arguing, "Last week, I was attacked for pointing out that parts of Birmingham were a failure of integration. But now Israeli football fans are banned from watching their team at Villa Park, as the police can't guarantee their safety. Maybe I wasn't wrong after all." And I'll tell you who was wrong, by the way, Lewis Goodall. Because do you remember, during that row, the fake newsagent's host posted, "Birmingham, my home city, is a fantastic city with fantastic people, a success story. It has its problems like anywhere, but the obsession the online right has with it is as transparent as it gets." As Chris Rose said, posted just 10 days ago, aged terribly already. But perhaps it was Katie Hopkins, who saw her life destroyed for warning against this threat, who made the most powerful intervention.
Things have taken a very serious turn here in the UK and are certainly speeding up at a rate of knots. Now, Jewish people banned from football in the UK. Jewish people have been banned from attending a football match in Birmingham in the UK in 2025. This at the behest of Muslims who are in control in that place, in control of the courts, in control of the police, in control of what goes on in that city. This is the West Midlands Police in action again, the second dodgiest police force behind West Yorkshire Police in my personal experience. It does beg the question, what will Jewish people in the UK be verboten, forbidden for doing next? I mean, maybe they won't be allowed on public transport. Maybe their passports could be stamped with the letter J. Maybe men will have to change their name to Israel and women to Zara. I mean, these are just thoughts. But Jewish people in the UK right now should treat every day like September the 1st, 1939, something I've been trying to warn about for 20 years, and which is coming true at a rapid rate of knots. I point the finger at the Board of Deputies and other Jewish organisations who continue to pat the crocodile thinking it won't come for them, because it will.
And until the liberal moderates wake up, there is going to be so much more of this. Look at Zara Sultana of Corbyn's Islamist party posting, "Next UEFA must ban all Israeli teams. We cannot have normalisation with genocide and apartheid. Maccabi Tel Aviv fans will not be allowed to attend Aston Villa match amid serious concerns." That was the headline, of course. Or Iqbal Muhammad, who ironically praised the police for not giving in to, quote, the Zionist and political pressure to let Israeli hooligans and terrorists run riot in our country. As James Price responded, "It's time we be honest. Islamist MPs are openly campaigning against Jews in Britain. This is disgusting beyond words. This must not stand." And the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, said this takes racial discrimination to a whole new level. Correct. He is correct. But what are we going to do about it? Because you have said that Reform UK will actually tolerate a lot of this extremism in order to win. And there are so many blatant hypocrisies in this decision. Like this weekend. Can you believe it? This weekend, the Premier League has decided that footballers are going to start taking the knee at every single game for Black History Month. No room for racism in football, unless, of course, it's anti-Semitism. Their boss has even been boasting about it on Sly News.
The importance of the message is never diminished.
After 5 years, this anti-racism gesture is being seen less. But the boss of the Premier League tells us players will take the knee for the first time this season, this weekend, marking Black History Month. Is taking a knee still effective?
It's always been their choice. It's never been something that has been forced upon them, either collectively or individually. And that we then decide whether they want to continue or stop. They want to make sure that whatever they do, it's effective.
And I don't give a damn what the Prime Minister does now. I don't give a damn. Zara Sultana knew about this a week ago. So the fact that he can toothlessly post after the announcement, this is the wrong decision, we will not tolerate anti-Semitism on our streets. The role of the police is to ensure all football fans can enjoy the game without fear of violence or intimidation. It's just weasel words. You know, send in the army, Starmer, if you really care. And remember, just hours earlier, he had been attempting to convince British Jews that they were safe, as he disagreed with both London Mayor Sadiq Khan and his Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood by admitting that the From the River to the Sea chant is indeed anti-Semitic.
So do you think, for instance, that the chant For the River to the Sea, Palestine will be free, is that an anti-Semitic chant in your view?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And so you've taken, that puts you in a different position to, say, the Mayor of London, who says that that's not, and it's dependent on the context.
Well, I'd take a strong view on this, and we've dealt with cases in my own party where people have used that expression and we've taken action against them. So I'm not just saying it to you here today. That is the history, that is the record that I have as leader of my party.
Now that there seems to be a ceasefire now that's been agreed by Donald Trump, you were there at the ceremony on Monday, would you tell people thinking of turning up to protest on Palestine now that the conflict's over, should they just pack it in and go home?
Well, I don't think we can say to anybody that they no longer have the right to freedom of expression and freedom to protest. I do think, on a number of fronts, firstly, on a human level, I had hoped that on the evening of the terrible events in Manchester, there wouldn't be marches and protests, just as an act of human respect and respect for others, and the same for the Saturday. So I was saddened to see those marches going ahead, because I thought that even if people wanted to express their view, perhaps they might take the view that that wasn't the time or the place to do so. I think we need to distinguish between those that have legitimate concerns that they want to express and those that are clearly anti-Semitic. And we need to deal with the latter much more robustly, in my view. And look, the peace plan is a really important step in the right direction, and it's really important for us as the United Kingdom to be part of the implementation and follow-through in relation to that. But I don't suggest for a minute that that leads to a diminution of anti-Semitism anywhere in the world, and in this country we have to follow this up with actions right here.
Oh, he's pathetic. He's pathetic, and he's finished. He's lost control of his party. But what I will say is that it's particularly depressing that in this toxic climate, that Britain's elite class, regime, media, and actually a lot of really influential Jews in this country have decided that their enemy is Tommy Robinson, just as he embarks on an emotional state visit of Israel. Watch his powerful interview with Amichai Chikili, the Israeli minister responsible for anti-Semitism.
Minister, how do you feel, as a minister in Israel, how do you feel about the Labour government's, how they've dealt with the extremism and the support for Hamas in Britain?
The weakest government since Chamberlain, and maybe even worse, despite the fact that the Chamberlain's delusional vision of the reality, peace in our time, maybe Chamberlain is worse than Keir Starmer, but it is the same mechanism of thinking that you can appease the monster and maybe buy some time and buy some quiet. And this strategy is driven by the same fear that the terrorist wants to put in your hearts. The Nazis were terrorists themselves, and they terrorized entire Europe, who were afraid to fight. And luckily we had Winston Churchill, who stood almost alone to fight against the Nazis. And we salute Churchill, and we admire Churchill here in Israel. And I personally admire Churchill. He's one of the greatest leaders in all times. And What we are seeing here is quite the same. I think that the strategy of Keir Starmer is driven by fear. He is afraid. He is afraid of the Islamist in Britain. He is afraid from states like maybe Turkey or Qatar. And I think that it's very important to understand this is not about Hamas and Israel. This is about the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a huge global movement.
How important is that interview? How important is that interview conducted by Tommy Robinson? But instead of actually looking into what's being said there, Jews have decided, at least Jews of the elite class, have decided to target Tommy Robinson on LBC with a vile column by the campaigner Heidi Backroom. Watch.
Do you believe he's using Israel and using Jews, some, as, or a kind of connection to Jews that he's fostering, as a means of furthering his own anti-Muslim agenda?
I mean, absolutely. He says that the problem is Islam. And what that erases, of course, is that in Israel, in real Israel, there are 20% Arab Israelis who the majority of are Muslims. And that is the actual reality of Israel. So they have real coexistence there, and it's not without problems, of course. But they've really come together since October 7th, and we've seen no major social uprisings or unrest. It's pretty harmonious, and actually Arab Israelis were very much targeted by Hamas and those with an extremist Islamist ideology, which I think is where the nuance falls down in his narrative. The way that he talks about it is not identifying the real problem, so it's just a cul-de-sac. We don't get anywhere. It just goes loops around, and it turns into a culture war that it isn't relevant in Israel, and it isn't relevant to our problems here.
Now, the brilliant Norman Fenton responded to that, saying there is a coordinated attack against Tommy Robinson by left-wing Jewish organisations and activists to coincide with his visit to Israel. Here is the reply I just sent to Heidi Backroom. And he wrote, Heidi, I greatly admire your efforts normally, but as a friend of Tommy Robinson, I can tell you that what you were saying here is completely wrong and offensive. Tommy's been a consistent friend of the Jews and is a far better advocate for Israel than the Board of Deputies. Yes, Tommy has called out leftist Jews like the Board of Deputies for demonising and censoring him, but that's something I and many other Jews do because their demonisation and censorship is based on lies and misinformation about him. And you've really got to start thinking about who the Board of Deputies should be targeting, right? Is it Tommy Robinson, who is in Israel right now as a friend of Israel, or the left-wing mainstream media favourite, Dr. Scholler? Because can I show you what Dr. Scholler has written? Maybe that should be your focus. Look at this today. We must de-Zionize Britain just as Germany was denazified. Start with removing Zionists from every position of power, banning Zionist ideology, prescribing Zionist lobby group organization a terrorist organization. Zionism is the brother to white supremacy. It is evil. And Heidi Backroom, in fairness to her, has tweeted, we cannot tolerate these people anymore. But my point is, the mainstream media are focusing on your campaign against Tommy Robinson. Do you not see how crazy it is? As Steve Miller argued, New Perspective are actually bored of hearing politicians call Tommy Robinson a racist. Where's the evidence over the last few years he's been racist? All I see is him wanting to protect our country, its values, and our girls. Politicians need to fact-check better. And actually, Lee Kern, who is no friend of Tommy Robinson either, made this powerful point. Listen to my precise words. Here is a genuine question to Britain's Jews, including organisations such as the Board of Deputies, for you to seriously reflect on. You know who Tommy Robinson is, and those of you critical of him attack him loudly and emotively. Why don't you know the names of Muslim imams living in the UK who preach jihad, intifada, and anti-Semitism? Why aren't they as famous? Why aren't you making them famous? Why aren't you up off your seat to publicly damn these racist Muslims? What failure is going on with Britain's Jewish leadership and with you, that you will know Tommy Robinson's name, but not the name of those Muslims in the UK who want to murder you? The Islamist preachers, charities, and news portals that are working to kill Jews. Do you not think they should become notorious household names? Some of you will respond that it's possible to call out both. The fact is you don't. The fact is there is an unjustifiable discrepancy between Tommy's notoriety and the Muslims who actually want to kill you. If you do not fix this, they will kill more of you. Powerful and true. Meanwhile, it's Tommy who continues to point out the threat of Islam to the UK, like a bomb maker for the Muslim Brotherhood who was put up at a 4-star hotel at our expense. Reforms Muslim star Layla Kainem, and I know Tommy Robinson is tweeting this woman, which makes you think that actually he is happy with moderate Muslims, has spoken up against this.
A terrorist, a bomb maker in Egypt, a convicted one, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, arrived on our shores illegally, claimed asylum, and was given an all-inclusive stay in a 4-star hotel paid for by us. He then went on to rape a woman in Hyde Park. Successive governments have imported rapists and terrorists into our country. I've said it before, we have no idea who these men are and what their history is back home. They could be terrorists, and now we know that one of them is. And any government would take that unknown into consideration when placing them, and would place them in detention centres, but ours doesn't. They place them amongst us, free to roam our streets. This is no longer a question of immigration. This is a question of national security. These men wouldn't pass security checks in Heathrow, yet if they arrive by boat, they're rewarded and waved through. If this happened in 2001 after September 11th, it would bring any government down. But now we're told it's too hard. And if you call it out, you're called far right. We need to hold a parliamentary debate, an emergency parliamentary debate, because we need answers. How many terrorists have arrived by boat? Does the government even know? And what are they doing to mitigate the serious threat that they have put this country in? This is very, very serious matter, and I would expect resignations. But as usual, I expect nothing will happen and no one will claim responsibility.
That comes as 2 Egyptians and an Iranian have been charged with raping a woman on Brighton Beach on October the 4th. Adam Brooks raged, "You cannot deny this now. We aren't racist, fascist or Nazis for opposing unknown foreign men dumped in our towns." And just look at the migrant hotel in Stevenage overnight, where illegals have been attacking independent journalists in the latest sign of unrest, again being ignored by the MSM.
I've got to keep an eye on the chat. I've got to keep what's being chucked at me at the moment. We've got flares being thrown, bangers, bottles of piss, everything.
Yeah, whatever that bottle is there, that was full. If that hit someone on the
head, no, definitely. Yeah, I'm under this thing trying to step back.
The result of all of this, of course, is that Slippery Starmer is finished, with Elon Musk now declaring the people of Britain want change. That was after a staggering new poll put Labour in 4th place, with its support now astonishingly lagging behind the Green Party. Mad People, led by Mr. Tit Whisperer himself, Zach Polanski, who truly wants to give our country away for good, as his new video about what it means to be British proves.
I went to Handsworth in Birmingham the other day. It was absolutely appalling. It's as close as I've come to a slum in this country.
Add lots of Norman French to some Angles, Saxon, Jutes and Vikings, then stir vigorously. Mix some hot Chileans, cool Jamaicans, Dominicans, Trinidadians and Bajans, with some Ethiopians, Chinese, Vietnamese and Sudanese. Then take a blend of Somalians, Sri Lankans, Nigerians and Pakistanis, and turn up the heat. Sprinkle some fresh Indians, Malaysians, Bosnians, Iraqis and Bangladeshis, together with some Palestinians, then add to the melting pot. Leave the ingredients to simmer. As they mix and blend, allow their languages to flourish, binding them together with English. Allow time to be cool. Add some unity, understanding and respect for the future, serve with justice and enjoy.
To respond now, acclaimed historian and broadcaster Rafe Haydel Mankoo, fellow of the New Culture Forum. Rafe, wow, I mean, this was inevitable, wasn't it? This was an inevitable result of what has been going on, the sectarianism, which is now part of British life.
You have to ask, what's happening to our country, when we are kowtowing and placating the enemies both within and without, right? Because just think what's happened this month. Externally, we've had the Labour government take the knee to China, allowing a spying case to collapse because they refused to identify China as an enemy and a national security threat. And then internally now, we have the same thing happening with our domestic threat, which is radical Islam. And once again, the government and councils are taking the knee. I mean, this is completely weak, completely cowardly. It's, Britain used to be a country that stood up for what was right. We wouldn't be cowed by terrorists. We always stood up and protected the vulnerable. This is a completely disgraceful betrayal, not only of the Jewish community in this country, but indeed of everything that our forebears fought and died for. It's completely indefensible. We've even had on the BBC Radio 4 this morning, the CEO of this Israeli football team, Maccabi, and he said they were able to actually have a game in Turkey, where the police in Turkey were able to perfectly protect the Israeli fans and the Israeli team. So that's the sort of state we've got to now in this country, where in the Muslim majority nations, Jews feel safer than they do in this country. We also know that we've had a leading figure, a leading member of the government of the United Arab Emirates, saying that Britain has a serious issue with radical Islam and terrorism. This is what happens when you are afraid to call out the virulence of the anti-Semitism, the bigotry, the homophobia, the misogyny of cultures that are completely incompatible with our way of life in the terms of radical Islam. And of course, we now have two-tier policing clearly in evidence here. What we have now is a system whereby the police don't judge things any longer in terms of the appropriateness of an event taking place. It's about which size group can bring out the biggest mobs into the street. We have the police here, along with the council, along with all the authorities who made this decision in Birmingham not to allow this. They are essentially too afraid of what might happen if they allow these things to go on. They're trying to essentially keep things simmering rather than allowing them to boil over.
Indeed, they are. Matt Goodwin made a good point on his Substack today, I thought, Rafe. He wrote, I wonder when will the Times, the newsagents, or New Statesman send Fraser Nelson, Emily Maitlis, and Andrew Marr to spend 1 month in Birmingham and offer us the typically insightful conclusion, yes, diversity is working. Because quite clearly it's not, Rafe. But you look at that post from Lewis Goodall, he was obviously responding to the comments from Robert Jenrick, which were branded racist. And as Maya Tusi said, Lewis posted this 10 days ago. Today, his Islamic city of Birmingham banned Jews from watching football. But they're tone deaf to this, aren't they, Rafe? I mean, could you believe that video from Zant Polanski, which today of all days, is being celebrated by the elite class, being retweeted infinitum by all of the people who seem to want to ignore what's actually happening to our country, Rafe?
Absolutely. You have to ask, are they dim, are they disingenuous, or are they deluded, or are they all three? They live in these rarefied, gilded cages, far removed from the dark side of diversity. They're not living at the coalface of the segregated communities that have blighted and completely changed so many towns and cities. For them, mass immigration has meant that they've got cheap gardeners, they have cheap cleaners, and they have essentially a nanny to look after their children. That to them is multiculturalism. Whereas, of course, for the vast mass of this country, people who are from the working class communities who have to deal with these troubles on a daily basis, they see what's happening. There's a reason that rape has quadrupled over the last 10 years when we've seen unprecedented immigration and including the Boris wave. We have the data. We know the top 10 countries from which we get the most violent crime, the most sexual assaults, robberies and so forth. And they are some of the same countries that Zach Polanski, the great hypnotist in chief, has listed
I know.
In his recipe. You know, I think
and
Rowan
he
Atkinson
should be a
once said-
joke, Rafe, but he's beating Labour in the polls. 15.3% of the polls, I think in part because he's getting this complete clear run from the mainstream media. Look, you talk about the Boris wave. I just have to show you this graph, which is based on Bank of England and Office for National Statistics figures, because it still makes me angry when I see this, Rafe. Still makes me angry. You know, look at our net migration into the United Kingdom up until Tony Blair became Prime Minister. But then look at what happened with the Boris wave. And it's devastating to me. This is irreversible, potentially.
Let's be clear. Mass immigration has been the greatest act of harm in our entire history. Far more damaging and consequential than the cost of fighting the Second World War. Far more important an issue than Brexit and leaving the European Union. Yet the British people were given a referendum on leaving the EU, but we were never consulted about this unparalleled demographic change that we've experienced.
No, but every time we have been consulted, Rafe, we've said no. I mean, every single time. I mean, right, dating back to Enoch Bowell, for God's sake, every single time we've said no and we've been ignored.
We've had more immigration in the last 25 years than in the last 2,000 years combined. We had more immigration in 2024 than we had in the entire decade of the 1980s and 1990s. Let's put that into, and the type of immigration we're getting now, of course, we're getting people who are coming from countries that are completely culturally incompatible. And you look, Eritrea, Somalia, Syria, Afghanistan, these are the countries whose people coming over here rank highest by factors of multiples of 10 in terms of the propensity to commit certain types of crime. We know, for example, 72% of Somalis in this country are in social housing compared to only 16% of the wider population. That's a rate of 4 times more. You know, we're told that we needed mass immigration to bring over all the scientists and the engineers and the doctors. Well, of the last 3 million visas granted, 0.8% were doctors and 0.6% were scientists and engineers. The reality is that only 1 in 20 migrants to this country is a high-earning contributor to the British economy. And for every pound they put into the economy, a low-skilled immigrant takes out £1.60. The majority of migrants that we've attracted, this is not against migration. If we can bring the creme de la creme to this country to enrich this nation, that's fine. But the type of low-skilled, low-earning mass migration we've had has been a disaster. So the average low-earning migrant who's come to this country is a net drain on the economy from the moment they arrive here. If they get to retirement age, they will have cost, each one will have cost £161,000. If they live to the age of 80, each one will have cost us £464,000. This is completely unmanageable. It's been a disaster. There was only ever one justification for mass immigration, and that was the economic argument. The economic argument, we were told, that was worth all the cultural change, that was worth all the importation of abhorrent cultural practices, you know, acid attacks, honor killings, child marriage, cousin marriage, forced marriage. All that was to be tolerated because of the economic benefits. Well, the economic argument has been blown out of the water, and even the OBR, the government's watchdog, the Office for Budget Responsibility, acknowledged that. All those stats I gave you come from the OBR.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary and deeply chilling, actually. Breaking right now, the deep state cover-up over the death behind bars of Britain's political prisoner Peter Lynch continues. I am absolutely furious about this. New details emerging about very obvious victimization of this brilliant father of 4 who was completely unfairly jailed after the so-called riots following the Southport massacre, when he was not involved in any violence whatsoever. And as you know, I have been speaking about Peter Lynch for the past year. I'm still so angry and so upset about what happened to him. So let me just take you through the new details that have emerged first. So here's the headline. Father of 4 rioter, the Mail called him, 61, killed himself in jail hours after being handed papers for unjust breach of prison rules. An inquest has heard. I just want to remind the Daily Mail that the issue is Peter Lynch was not a rioter. He was a protester. He was a long-term protester. And even the body cam footage released by the police proved that. Watch.
Scum! Praying for our children. I pray for my children. I pray for my children. I pray for the shield. I pray for my children.
Okay, so let me just be very clear, because this matters, okay? And this is why I'm so angry about this case. Peter Lynch did call the police scum, but he was not violent towards them in any way. He did approach the police, but you can see that the police were actually violent towards him. And that matters, because he should never have been locked up. So here's the report as a result of the inquest. A father of 4 rioter killed himself in jail just hours after being handed papers for an unjust breach of prison rules. Peter Lynch was jailed for 2 years and 8 months in August 2024 by a judge who heard how he was at the front of a mob outside a hotel housing asylum seekers in Rotherham. He died at HMP Magdalen, South Yorkshire 2 months later, and an inquest last year heard his death was a result of hanging. But at a pre-inquest review on Thursday, and remember we haven't heard about this at all until now, it was revealed that Lynch had been placed on a charge for a breach of prison rules on the evening of October the 18th, 2024, the night before his death. No details of the allegation he faced were given, but Doncaster's senior coroner Nicola Mundy noted the rioter, that's the male's words by the way, had felt it was unjust. No details of the allegation he faced were given, and the coroner also said Lynch disagreed with the account of his actions given by officers in adjudication papers. Ms. Mundy said that she would give her ruling on the inquest scope next week, but indicated she wanted the jury to consider Lynch's mental health and assessments from the point he was arrested and entered police custody. The father of 4, of course, part of a crowd that gathered outside the Holiday Inn Express in Rotherham on August the 4th, 2024. Body cam footage was shown to the court of him shouting, "You are protecting people who are killing our kids and raping them," and scum at police with riot shields. I mean, what's untrue? Scum, okay, that's an opinion. But saying you're protecting people who are killing our kids, that's a fact. He was filmed repeatedly challenging officers as they tried to push him back with shields, screaming, "Protect my kids," and yelling, "We are on the streets now to protect our kids." Lynch was also pictured holding a placard asserting the corruption of MPs, judges, the media and police. How is he wrong? How was he wrong? At the sentencing hearing on August the 22nd, 2024, Judge Jeremy Richardson Casey heard how Lynch suffered from diabetes, thyroid issues and angina and had recently had a heart attack. But the judge still locked him up and told him you did not yourself attack any police officer as far as can be detected. But what you did was encourage by your conduct others to behave violently, and you were part of this mob. The Crown Court heard how Lynch had been married for 36 years and had 4 adult children and 3 grandchildren. During the sentencing, Lynch, who was called a family man, pleaded guilty to violent disorder, and he shouted racist and provocative remarks towards police and called asylum seekers child killers. He was working in the packing industry but was recently made unemployed. It's a heartbreaking story, genuinely. And it has broken my heart, actually, for a number of months. And I do not trust what we are being told here. Because why are we only learning now that there was apparently this new charge against him based on his behaviour in prison the day before his death? And I just want to remind everyone what Martin Brunt, the crime editor of Sly News, had reported about what was going to be handed to the so-called rioters in prison.
And if they do end up in prison, somebody who knows about these things told me that, any right-wing, far-right protester landing up in jail, they can expect a pretty cold reception from what he says are Asian gangs inside prison who will be looking out for them.
So forgive me if I don't trust the official narrative. By the way, I just want to show you what type of guy Peter Lynch was, because he had been protesting for years. This is the thing. He didn't go out in anger after the Southport massacre. He had been a long-term protester talking about the corruption of the system during Brexit and during the COVID years. Watch.
Just because you lose, just because you lose, you're a joke. Just because you lose, out. Out means out. What does he mean to you? What does he mean to you? I suggest you move take out means out. Democratic right.
What do you think?
Traitors to the country. Traitors to the country. Out means out. Out means out. Out means out.
Historian and broadcaster and New Culture Forum fellow Rafe Haydel Mankoo with me. Rafe, look, he was someone who was deeply concerned about the deep state in the United Kingdom, but his prison sentence, given what he did, given that the judge even admitted that there was no violence against officers, I mean, I think it was utterly barbaric. And why are we only learning now? The fact that there was this new charge against him for behavior in prison, which he disputed the day before he is said to have hanged himself.
Yeah, and that's a key point. He disputed this, and we haven't been given any detail about what he is alleged to have done. But let's just remember here, this is a man who isn't by any stretch of the imagination some far-right racist thug. This is not a violent man. This is a serial protester who's generally concerned about the government of this country. Now, you can agree with him or not, you can regard him as a conspiracy theorist or not, but you can't deny that this is somebody who time and again has demonstrated that he uses his right, freedom of expression to protest. And instead of that, he was branded as a far-right rioter. Even today, the title on newspaper headlines calls him a rioter. In fact, he's Britain's 21st century political prisoner. That's who he is. But
Yes.
imagine being a person of his condition, an elderly man with serious physical ailments, suffered a heart attack recently, knowing that he's been slurred and slandered as far right, then to be put into a prison scenario where he'd be looking over his shoulder every moment as these radical Muslim gangs dominate some of those prisons. Remember, this is where many Muslims get radicalized. Over 50% of the Muslim prison chaplains are radical Deobandis, the same cult that gave birth to the Taliban. And is it any surprise, therefore, that he would be perhaps stressed out and playing up in prison, worrying about that sort of future? And let's just remember, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for holding up a sign and shouting in anger. And he wasn't motivated by racism. He wasn't not giving Nazi salutes. He wasn't like a rabid anti-Semite or anything like that. This was an anger fueled because of the slaughter of young girls in Southport. This was a father and a grandfather concerned about that. And if he had gone before a jury, I don't think he would have been convicted. Who knows? But I don't think he would have gone to prison. This was because so many of these people who were protesting were told that they should plead guilty to all of this. But let's just remember here, there was a man who tried to stab somebody in Knightsbridge because he was burning a Quran. This man literally had a knife, was trying to murder a man who was burning the Quran. He escaped a prison sentence. We had a woman, Victoria Bowen, I think her name was, who threw a milkshake onto Nigel Farage. She escaped prison. And here we have a peaceful man with a loud voice. I perhaps wouldn't have called the police scum, but for that, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison.
And of course,
disgrace.
Ricky Jones as well. Ricky Jones, who actually suggested the throat should be slit of his political opponents. He escaped jail too. And by the way, Lucy Connolly, in her interview with me, made it very clear, and she was very concerned about what happened to Peter Lynch, but made it clear that she didn't believe that Ricky Jones should go to prison either. But I think the key point, Rafe, that you have made, and you're absolutely right to point it out, he should never have pleaded guilty. Of course, he should never have pleaded guilty. But the problem is these people, Rafe, are being put under intolerable pressure and being told, and because remember, they were remanded, they were remanded even though they were clearly no threat. I mean, we see Jihad al-Shami, the terrorist who went and killed the people at the Manchester synagogue, who had been reported to the police for extremism and was out on bail for rape. You know, he's on the streets, but of course Lucy Connolly and Peter Lynch, they were remanded. And there was intolerable pressure put on them because Starmer had made it very clear he wanted quick sentences, he wanted harsh justice. And they misled these people, didn't they, Rafe? Because they tried to make out, look, if you just plead guilty, we're going to remand you now, you'll get a much lighter prison sentence. No way. I mean, they had the book thrown at them.
Absolutely. And I would have hoped and I would have thought that the death of Peter Lynch would have led calls for an inquiry as to how was it that somebody who clearly wasn't a rioter, who clearly wasn't violent, was put in that situation. Indeed, how is it that Lucy Connolly found herself in that situation because they were forced to plead guilty? These are people who were stressed, who were pressured, who aren't masters of the law, and they even had, defense lawyers telling them they should. It's utterly disgraceful. But in the first part of your segment today, when you spoke about the reasons that the Israeli football team fans were being banned from coming over, you quoted and you showed an excerpt from that video by that vile Muslim cleric who said essentially that we will show no mercy to Maccabi Tel Aviv fans for traveling to Birmingham. And that was one of the statements that caused the police to decide not to allow the fans to come over. No talk about the police visiting this man absolutely spewing vile hate, I would say an incitement to hatred, clearly, just on the same level or more than the unfortunate tweet of Lucy Connolly. Nothing done about that at all. This is genuine two-tier policing and two-tier justice in evidence.
No, it really is. It really is. And I mean, we saw it with the Oxford student, didn't we? Sam Williams, who's actually nominated to be our worst Briton in the world this week. Initially, the police weren't going to do anything, right? They were just going to ignore it. He's chanting, put the Zionists in the ground. Then there's the pressure that comes from people on our side of the fence, Rafe, saying, well, hang on a moment, if Lucy Connolly is jailed. I worry about all of this, though, because I think fundamentally I want speech to be free. Let's use daylight as the best disinfectant to sort of expose these people. But I do understand the other argument, which is that you're locking up Lucy Connolly, you're locking up Peter Lynch. How on earth can you not lock up these left-wing people? I did find it quite funny, by the way, to end on a lighter note. Bob Villan, that awful bloke sort of moaning about the fact he's been cancelled. It's like, well, you F around and you find out. F around and find out, Bob Villan. And all of that's happening is exactly what should happen. The market is realizing, okay, maybe you won't go to jail for your hate speech, but we don't want to be associated with you. Breaking today, Laurence Fox in a major court victory over the hard left extremists, including the former Coronation Street and Talk TV star Nicola Thorpe, who accused him of being a racist. Now, this has been a messy and long-running court battle. I mean, Laurence himself admits that this has taken up 5 years of his life. But effectively, the first judgment was insane because it found in favour of the leftists for Laurence responding to their racist claim with his paedophile claim. And it said, basically, Laurence is wrong for calling them all pedos, even though he was making a point, but there's no damage to him, you calling him racist. Now, of course, by the way, what should also matter here is the truth, and Laurence Fox is clearly not racist. He might make comments you don't like, but he's just married a mixed-race woman, so that makes no sense. Here's how he announced the major news today.
Hello. I wanted to share some news with you, 5 years in the making. This morning, the Court of Appeal ruled in my favour that I did indeed suffer serious harm to my reputation following being called a racist by Nicola Thorpe, Simon Blake and Colin Seymour back in 2020. There's a fuller response in the replies to this video, but Lord Justice Warby said in his judgment, in my opinion, the only conclusion reasonably available to the judge was that the publication of each of the claimants' tweets did cause serious harm to Mr. Fox's reputation. This has been a long and sometimes very dark 5 years, But I believe, and I continue to believe from the bottom of my heart, that this is a fight worth fighting. We don't want to live in a country where conversations and careers are destroyed and shut down by that most appalling of slurs. And I hope now, in fact I know now, that people will think twice before making that horrible allegation again. I was cancelled entirely from the job I love and I still love and I hope to do again overnight. So I am so grateful for this outcome, and I hope it plays a part in putting free speech exactly back where it belongs, at the cornerstone of any free society. I am also very humbled by the support I've received from so many of you, so thank you. It's at times like these when you really do find out who your friends are and cherish them, really do. So I'd like to thank the judges in the Court of Appeal. I'd like to thank my wonderful legal team. I'd like to thank those who've supported me fully, and more than anything, I would like to thank my amazing wife who has stood by me through this and held my hand all the way through. Have a blessed day.
As I say, it is a technically interesting case because there is the potential for Nicola Thorpe and the other two leftists to have a retrial, but the understanding is that the costs would be so significant that probably it wouldn't make sense for them to go down that path. So it is a huge win for Lawrence. He clarified further what it means for him, posted on X, "I'm delighted and grateful that the Court of Appeal has ruled in my favour on my appeal today, ruling that the trial judge was wrong to find that I had not suffered serious harm to my reputation as a result of Blake, Seymour and Thorpe's false slurs that I was a racist. Of course, those slurs damaged my reputation, and Lord Justice Warby, the most senior libel judge in England, agreed. He held that, in my opinion, the only conclusion reasonably available to the judge was that the publication of each of the claimant's tweets did cause serious harm to Mr. Fox's reputation generally. I look forward to the retrial and testing the defences of opinion and truth on the question whether I am a racist, as they all alleged, and I fully expect to be vindicated on those issues. I abhor racism and have always been colourblind, and the defendants will not be able to prove otherwise. In fact, my original tweet was about racial segregation, which I do not agree with at all, and I don't think that people should be defined by or divided by race. But this case was never about me. It was a battle for the freedom of speech in my beloved English language, and to stop the slur of racism being weaponised to gag those engaging in genuine debate that is important to society. I was very disappointed and upset when the original judge dismissed my claim that I'd suffered serious harm to my reputation by being called a racist, and this is now the second time I've had to go to the Court of Appeal. Although it is hard, it does show that the British justice system works. You won't always agree with everything in every judgment, but the system does seem to work in the end. We should be proud of our country, which I love and has so much going for it. I'm really grateful to all three judges in the Court of Appeal for hearing my appeal with an open mind, for finding in my favour on serious harm, and for the obvious care taken in the detailed judgment given by Lord Justice Warby. I really hope that this judgment will make people think twice before unfairly slurring people they disagree with allegations of racism. Now, Rafe Haydel Mankoo, what is very interesting here, and I think it really matters, is that Lawrence didn't start this fight. Okay, what happened is that he was responding to being called a racist, and so in kind responded to these three leftists, including Nicola Thorpe, saying, well, you're paedophiles. And he was making the point that if you're going to call me a racist, it's so absurd, I'm going to call you something which is really absurd too. He clearly was not suggesting that they actually were paedophiles. It was a maybe reckless thing to do from a legal point of view, but it was clearly something in context which in court was taken out of context. And of course, he lost. And part of this judgment is the appeal court saying, actually, this is insane. Like, these people were awarded, £180,000. Like it's nuts. Personally, I wish this had stayed out of court altogether. I don't think anyone succeeds here apart from the lawyers. But I can understand why Lawrence wasn't just going to roll over.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Look, Lawrence should never have been put into a situation like this. Firstly, it was a great attack on rhetorical flourish, right? He was clearly speaking rhetorically when he referred to them as paedophiles, and that's part of the beauty, I would say, of debate. That great, the wit, whether it's advisable or not, but rhetoric is a way in which you can highlight how ridiculous your opponent is being, and that's what he was trying to do here. And you would have to be several sandwiches short of a picnic not to have realized that he wasn't really calling them paedophiles. And you have to wonder about the judge in this case, the original judge in this case, because there are the two worst things to be called in the West today are, one, a racist, and two, a paedophile. So with the racist slur having been put against, racist libel having put against Lawrence, he responded in kind. More importantly, he used the exact phrasing that had been used against him. The journalist Thorpe, who had called him a racist, said, anyone who employs him is doing so in the full knowledge that Lawrence Fox is an outright racist or whatever. And he used the exact terminology and just replaced racist with paedophile. And what the judge was essentially saying in that original judgment was that it's either it's not a trouble to be called racist, or secondly, you actually really are a racist, so you can't be, So either of those is completely outrageous. And what we know, of course, is that that's given carte blanche now to people on the left and elsewhere to use that moniker of racist as a cudgel to silence debate, to silence anybody who dares to speak the truth, who dares to say the emperor has no clothes, who dares to reveal that diversity is our greatest weakness. It's now so easy for them to be silenced with the threat of being called a racist.
Rafe, really interesting exchange on Talk TV between Rupert Lowe of Restore Britain and Jeremy Kyle. Jeremy Kyle has made clear he's pretty much a Reform UK guy now. He hosted at their conference and has flirted with the possibility of becoming an MP at the next election. But Rupert is still furious, quite understandably, about how they tried to get him locked up again for speech, but used a terrorist slur here against Reform. Watch this.
Why did they politically assassinate me in the most unchristian and clumsy and unfair way? I don't even have to ask them that. That's going to be played out in court. That's not going to drop. But look, at the end of the day, that's history. They decided to do that. It was a surprise to me. I don't understand it. And as I said, I played a big part in achieving what we collectively achieved. And many of us carried it on while Nigel left the field to make money, which is what.
But why did you carry? Why would you say that I'm just out of respect? Why would you say? Why would you say I'm?
Would I now go and work? Would I now go and work with Lee Anderson, Zia Yusuf, and people who made palpably false witness statements about me that could have landed me in prison? No, I wouldn't.
No. But why are you? Why
would
are you?
Would I go back and lead the decent people who vote for reform as a leader of reform? Yes, I would, because I don't have a problem going back when I can control what happens, but I'm not going to go and work with a group of lightweight people who behaved in a terrorist-like way, Jeremy. No, it doesn't work like that. And with the power of the British state behind them, they'll be even more dangerous.
Interesting language, isn't it, Rafe? Terrorist-like, dangerous. But you probably know, I have huge sympathy for Rupert Lowe. I think what they did to him was terrible. And it still makes me sad, actually, because I think it was the beginning of sort of tearing out some of the heart and some of the true conservatism from reform.
Yeah, I don't think it's wise language that Rupert Lowe used there. I don't think that the right needs to have internecine fights and squabbles and divisions. We are facing the greatest challenge, an existential challenge to the future of this country, and we all do need to work together to solve it. And we see how the left tears itself up. There's your party of Sultana and Corbyn. They're in disarray. We cannot allow ourselves to be sidetracked by personal issues and squabbles. Look, a lot of sympathy goes out on all levels in all sorts of different ways, but I think we really must focus now on getting rid of this Labour government and essentially trying what we can do to enforce the policies that Rupert wants, of mass deportations, voluntary remigrations, doing everything we can to restore Britain to how it used to be before we allowed the great tragedy of the 21st century to unfurl. And it has to be said, the Reform Party of today has embraced far more radical policies than it had several months ago. So it's now, of course, embracing policies which aren't that different to those being advocated by Restore Britain and Rupert Lowe. So it's very sad that we've had this schism on the right. But actually, I think in terms of policies, you are seeing the Reform Party adopting far more draconian and far more stringent and hard policies on many of the key issues, which should hopefully unite all elements of the right.
Developing today, Donald Trump wants the real juice on Meghan Markle. And guess who he went to try and find out what's really going on with the fake Duchess? Only the Queen. Only Queen Camilla. This extraordinary detail about a conversation on the state visit of the United Kingdom by the US president has been revealed by Tom Sykes of the Royalist blog. Here's the headline: how Trump asked Camilla, "What's the gossip on Meghan?" He reports the source tells the Royalist that when Donald Trump visited King Charles and Queen Camilla for his state visit last month, he asked Queen Camilla, "So what's the gossip on Meghan then? What's going on there?" The exclusive revelation from the Royalist mole in the heart of the establishment will irritate the palace, which hates seeing big state events upstaged by gossipy details of private conversations, which I, guess is fair enough. However, he goes on to report this new detail about Trump looking for Meghan T is worth reporting, I think, because it tells us a good bit about Trump's ongoing fascination with the British monarchy. It certainly shows us that Trump is still following the story of the errant Prince Harry and his wife and would have liked an exclusive update. Trump's history with Markle predates her royal life, of course. In 2016, when she was still an actress and he a mayor presidential candidate, she called him misogynistic and divisive on a Comedy Central panel show. Since then, he's called her terrible, said Harry was whipped like no person I've ever seen. I mean, true. And publicly fantasized about their divorce. He told Piers Morgan that Meghan would end it bad and find another guy. I also think he's right there. He even suggested that Harry could be deported if he had lied about previous drug use on his visa before then saying, "I don't want to do that. I'll leave him alone. He's got enough problems with his wife. She's terrible." Sorry, he cracks me up. Trump's fixation with Meghan is part of his binary worldview. Of course, you cross him, you're done. But what is also interesting is that Trump's circle has learned to harness resentment of Meghan, whose progressive world salads foregrounding of subjective reality, and as her critics see it, performative wokery energize those on the right of the global culture wars. Eric Trump called Meghan and Harry spoiled apples. May Mailman, a Harvard-educated lawyer and close ally of Trump's ideological architect, Stephen Miller, recently deployed the phrase Meghan Markle syndrome on a New York Times podcast, defining it as manufacturing trauma in service of success. The truth, of course, is that Trump and Meghan have more in common than either would admit. Both are hugely concerned with image, both profess to detest the press while depending on it, and both understand the value of weaponizing the narrative of grievance. So when Trump turns to Queen Camilla and asks, "So what's the gossip on Meghan?" my feeling is that he is trying to signal to the establishment that he is in their camp. Camilla, I'm told, gracefully avoided replying to Trump's inquiry, but made a gesture, which her husband has also been known to make, crossing her wrists as if they were handcuffed to suggest with her eyes smile that she couldn't say anything. To Rafe Haydel Mankoo, he is a historian, broadcaster, and of course one of Britain's #1 constitutional and royal experts, also a fellow at the New Culture Forum. So Rafe, is it inappropriate for Tom Sykes to go there? Do you know what I mean? To report this private exchange between the Queen and Trump? Because I know some people say it was inappropriate, but I have to say I loved it, Rafe. I loved the little detail.
Yes, look, those who enjoy a gossip will absolutely have loved this. I had a
guilty as charged.
I don't think, obviously with my constitutional hat on, I don't think those things are advisable. But certainly, the journalists and all of us would love to know these details. And of course, during the state visit, remember, many people were being very dismissive of the president, saying, "Oh, what will he have to talk about to members of the royal family? They have nothing in common." Well, they certainly have one thing in common, and that's their attitude to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall there to see Her Majesty crossing her hands like as if they were shackled. And I can only imagine the chuckle that Her Majesty must have had with the King later on that evening when they were alone discussing all of this. But yes, it just does go to show the great degree of support and affection that President Trump has for the monarchy, the most Anglophilic president we've had in recent memory, contrasts with President Biden, virulent Anglophobe. Just remember this, runs deep in the Biden family. His mother once slept on the floor of an Irish hotel when she was told that Queen Elizabeth II had slept in one of the bedrooms. And rather than risk sleeping in the same bed as the Queen, she slept on the floor. Now that's, I would call, monarchy derangement syndrome.
Yes.
Right there.
Indeed. Look, bit of an issue potentially, I think, for the king involving this woman, Emma Grede. So let me just take you through the story. So she is an ambassador for the King's Trust, right? But last night hosted a dinner in Los Angeles and then briefed to the media how Meghan Markle was the star guest and, you know, she bought the wine and all of that type of thing. They then posed together on video backstage. And I mean, there were a couple of awkward little moments, actually. Let me show you this. First, she nearly hit Meghan during one of her speeches.
There are those of you that are raising a lot of money, are trying to raise a lot of money.
And then Meghan was furious when she dared to interrupt her here. Can you see? Can you see the look on Meghan's face? But lots of people saying, well, actually, you've got to choose a side. Nancy Sidley, the royal YouTube sensation, writing, okay, King's Foundation must immediately strip Emma Grede from being an ambassador. This is outrageous. Emma cannot be trusted to do the work on behalf of the King for the good of the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. This is an interesting one, Rafe, isn't it? Because on the whole, what we have seen is people do tend to pick a side, right? And most high-profile folk, including Hollywood celebrities, by the way. I mean, I'm thinking of everyone from, you know, Taylor Swift to Lady Gaga. You know, the biggest stars in the world have chosen their side, and they have chosen the British royal family, and they have chosen King Charles and Prince William. But is there an issue with someone like Emma Grede sort of trying to straddle both?
I personally think it is. I'm never very comfortable when the monarchy allies itself too closely with the world of celebrity, because they do essentially hold themselves as hostages to fortune. And of course, when your role as an ambassador to a royal cause comes into conflict with perhaps your personal career and what benefits it may accrue to you by associating yourself with someone like Meghan. I don't know possibly in what way associating with Meghan would advance you in any way, but they do come into conflict. And I think the royal household have been very good at choosing and selecting ambassadors in the past, and other people who are very sound and whose, you know, Tom Cruise and others, whose politics, or not the politics necessarily, but whose ability to sympathize with the royal family side of things is very clear. I'm not terribly familiar with this woman as a whole, I have to say, but it does seem as if perhaps she's a bit too much LA and far less Windsor in terms of her outlook and her attitude.
Yeah, I agree, actually. And I mean, the problem, I guess, is, Rafe, though, we're going to see Meghan become increasingly desperate, aren't we? And it's going to cause more and more issues for the British royal family. I mean, think of what we've seen in the last fortnight alone. She invites herself to the Balenciaga show in Paris. There's this revolting stunt where she quite clearly tries to emulate Diana's final journey in Paris. I mean, I know her team have pushed against that, but it's like, sorry, if you're that not thoughtful to realize what's going on, that's an issue anyway. Then she's straight to New York, briefing the paparazzi constantly, you know, come and get this picture with Ed Sheeran, come and get this picture with Gloria Steinem. You know, it's right back to like the Soho House girl days. Then to Washington, D.C., where she makes a whole load of nasty claims about the royal family needing to heal after the royal family on stage. And the problem is, Rafe, nothing is working for her. So we're seeing more and more and more and more of this.
And let's not forget also her most recent jibe against the royal family, when she mocked and laughed the royal household's requirement that ladies in the royal family wear pantyhose, for example.
In the Bloomberg interview,
look,
yeah.
Everything she has is completely fraying around it. Look, she's now been trying to defend this Netflix deal. Essentially, Netflix are trying to give her a way out the back door here, a much smaller deal that she secured with Netflix. And all it really means is Netflix has the right of first refusal. So Netflix is not any longer committed to producing any of the tripe that she puts out, the saccharine broadcasts. And you can see also that she's increasingly desperate to remain relevant because nothing that she's done has succeeded. Her last show passed with barely a murmur from the media world. She's now desperate, as you say, going to these inviting herself to fashion shows and then tweeting on social media, making it sound as if she's cooperating in some way with fashion designers. This is desperate stuff. This is somebody who's clearly wanting, her whole career has been about social advancement and career advancement. We know that's why she married into the royal family. She used the Duke of Sussex as a springboard to stardom. Once she secured that, there was no need for a royal family. But now she's realizing the royal family was actually her only hope, because without the royal family, we can all see that she has no talent. There's no quality there. She might be a shrewd businesswoman in some capacities, but she doesn't have the ability to produce the content, to have the charm, the charisma, and the talent to make a success of any of that.
No
and unfortunately,
she doesn't. She doesn't. So it's going to get worse. But look, you've got to feel sorry for Charles at the moment, the king, Rafe. You know, whatever you might think of him, there are challenges on every front. Okay, and what's going on with Prince Andrew is just adding to this existing strain in regards to Prince Harry. Now, of course, Buckingham Palace make clear, and I don't disagree with this, by the way. I know some people have questioned this, but they say, look, Harry is the bigger deal for Buckingham Palace. He is posing more issues. There's the renewed attempt to get security. You know, he's written to Shabana Mahmood, the UK's new leftist Home Secretary, even though he had promised Charles he wasn't going to get back involved in that battle. So I actually agree with Buckingham Palace that Harry is the bigger issue. Harry and Meghan, like, as a package. However, what's going on with Prince Andrew over the past couple of weeks has been pretty devastating for the king, especially given he took a bit of a chance bringing Andrew and Fergie back into the royal fold against the wishes of his eldest son. And then you look at the front pages of the UK newspapers today, Rafe, and I mean, we're now learning Andrew met the Chinese spy master 3 times. This is the guy who has been part of this espionage trial, which has exploded in the United Kingdom. Then you have the email that he sent to Jeffrey Epstein, which, I'm sorry, does prove that he did lie, and he has been lying for some time. And now you have the book, the autobiography by Virginia Giuffre, sort of haunting Andrew from beyond the grave, where she accuses the Duke of viewing having sex with her as his birthright, and describes how he seemed to get off on the fact that she was only slightly older than his daughters. So from what I'm told, Rafe, and I don't know what you're hearing, but, you know, William is just very much like, he's got to go. You know, he's got to leave Royal Lodge. He's got to leave the country. This is exile time now. But Charles is concerned that how can you push someone any further, you know, because obviously Andrew is no longer part of formal royal life. You know, he is effectively retired. So what do you think the monarch should do here?
Well, the first thing we know, of course, is that if Prince Andrew is still alive when Prince William succeeds to the throne, then we will see even further drastic attempts made to send him into Coventry. I think there's no doubt about that whatsoever. The king has already done a lot, as we know. The king has cut off his funding, his personal allowance. He's also cut off his security. How the Duke of York manages to continue to fund his security remains a great question, and to how long he can carry on funding that.
Well, yeah, and that's why maybe there's these dodgy meetings, Rafe, with people like the Chinese spy master. That's the problem. If you financially starve someone, they become desperate.
That's what I was going to say. So that's potentially an area where the king could actually intervene and force his brother out of Royal Lodge, be it to Frogmore Cottage, or be it perhaps an even bigger exile to somewhere in Scotland or indeed outside of the UK. The king also, of course, has the ability to formally strip him of the Royal Highness. Now, he's not using the style of Royal Highness, but he could be stripped of his Royal Highness by letters patent. Stripping him of the Dukedom of York, that's potential, but that would have to go through Parliament as an act of Parliament. And of course, you'd have to justify to the government that it's worth taking up parliamentary time to strip him of his title. So there aren't really that many more things that the king can do, although, of course, it has been touted that Prince Andrew could be banned from ever going to Sandringham or to Balmoral or Windsor or Buckingham
because of these
Palace.
shooting weekends, Rafe. I mean, this is Tom Sykes' big issue at the moment. You know, he's basically saying, you know, the way to remove Prince Andrew of any sort of existing cachet in high society is to remove his rights to host shooting weekends.
Yeah.
And then he'd almost be forced to potentially move, I don't know, Rafe, people seem to speculate on the fact he'll end up in Saudi Arabia or something like that, and then Prince William will be happy.
Look, my view has always been the same thing. Everybody in the nation regarded Prince Andrew very highly for his conduct in the Falklands War, and in the Falklands War, as a pilot, he was willing to risk his life for Queen and country. He now needs to do the same thing, sacrifice his public life completely for the sake of king and country, and that means disappear from view forever in whatever way they decide to eventually do it.
I know, look, it's a tragic situation, Rafe. It is a tragic situation all round, because I like to have these discussions without hysteria, and I do think we need to remind people, because I do believe in being fair to Andrew. You know, I've gone on quite a journey. I was very, very tough on him in the early days, but then I learned a little bit about the psychological impact of what he's going through and how close to death, to be frank, you know, he was. And all I will say, Rafe, is that, remember, he did want to fight Virginia Giuffre, a proven liar on lots of issues, in court, but he was effectively told by the royal establishment, and my God, they came down on him like a ton of bricks, you will destroy your mother's platinum jubilee if you even countenance this. You have to settle, and then you've got to go quietly. And he did that. And as a result, there was no court case against Virginia Giuffre. So I just feel like there has to be a bit of balance to this. However, it's inexcusable, the lies that he told. Totally inexcusable.
But that's why I said it the way that I said it in relation to the Falklands War. He has not been found guilty in a court of law, but he has been found guilty in the public arena, in the public court. The public have found him guilty, rightly or wrongly. And there comes a point, whether you are a soldier or a prince, where you have to put the interests of the monarchy first, king and country or queen and country. And there's more damage caused by the continuance of that association. That's why I think the honourable thing to do, the gentlemanly thing to do, as he said himself in his Emily Make This interview, he's a gentleman, is to essentially remove himself completely from the fray. And yes, there would have been more sympathy for him, perhaps, had it not been revealed that he was still in touch with Epstein after when he claimed he was in the Emily Maitlis interview. And of course, we've also had the evidence with Sarah, Duchess of York, as well. So and then of course the Chinese and other oligarchs and despots from around the world who we know historically. So I think a clean break of some sort is required. But of course, still have Princess Eugenie and Beatrice, who will remain, of course, a link between the palace and the Duke.
Really fascinating stuff. Rafe Haydel Mankoo, one of the best in the United Kingdom, true patriot. Make sure you subscribe to his brilliant YouTube channel where you can find a lot of his work. And of course, he is also a fellow of the New Culture Forum. And my God, it's been a really tough week for the New Culture Forum, Rafe, with the announcement of Peter Whittle's cancer diagnosis. There was such an outpouring, actually, from Outspoken viewers, and he was our greatest Briton this week, and we're just sending Peter and all of you at the New Culture Forum all of our love and support.
Thanks so much, Dan. That's greatly appreciated. And we've been overwhelmed by all the thousands of messages, literally thousands, that have come to Peter, and we'll pass the message on to him. Thank you.
He's a great man. He is a great man, as are you, Rafe Haydel Mankoo. So thank you so much. And I always love having you on Outspoken. Please come back soon, Rafe. Thank you so much. And of course, we're now going to reveal the worst Briton in the world this week. But first, your feedback. Jay Hartley, 7211, says Tony Blair, by far. He should be rotting in a cell for all the crimes against humanity he has caused and continues to push evil agendas. Samuel Smith agrees. He says the answer is and will always be Tony Blair over any other Labour muppet. His 30-year plan into the destruction of the UK has never stopped or slowed down. While Keir Starmer is a very hateable figure, remember the reasons you dislike him. Mass immigration, backdoor communism, human rights bureaucracy, two-tier justice, digital ID. These are all part of Blair's legacy. There's lots of negativity towards Tony Blair, and I completely understand it. Although Charlie Chuck 99 says, Starmer. It's always going to be Starmer. It always will be until the day he's removed from office. The rest would be suitable candidates after that time. Although an honourable mention here from Shanghai Rooster or Samuel Williams, the arrested Oxford student. He writes, normally it would be either Starmer or Blair, but it has to be that disgusting excuse for a human being, Williams, for advocating genocide quite openly. Does he think he's Julius Streicher or something? If he doesn't get a good long stretch inside, we'll know that justice in Britain is dead. Okay, the results are in. So many votes. Again, thank you so much. Let's reveal the results now. In fourth place, with 3% of your vote, Rachel Reeves. In third place, with 8% of your vote, Samuel Williams. The runner-up with 18% of your vote, Tony Blair. But the worst Briton in the world this week, with 70% of your vote, it's Slippery Starmer. Thank you so much for your company all week long. I have so appreciated it. I love you being part of Outspoken, especially our live episodes. But we are moving over to Substack now, where, according to Taz, is standing by for our royal uncancelled after show. My goodness, there's so much to discuss today. Meghan's behaviour last night. I know we touched on it briefly there with Rafe, but we're going to get into it so much more. Plus new backlash coming from the US. So if you do want to watch that, then please do join us over on Substack. www.outspoken.live is the address. I hope you have a restful and peaceful weekend. I really look forward to being back with you live on Monday, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. So hit subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. Remember, subscribe to our podcast too, which is now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, actually, and rate and review. That could be a little thing you do this weekend for me. But see you Monday. Have an amazing weekend. And most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you.